Everybody welcome Butch Patrick. I gotta tell you about Butch, okay? He's the first celebrity that I ever met and I ever worked with. And I never asked him about the Monkees episode for like the first 3 months that I knew him. And he's the reason I got where I am. So you never know where you are going to be in life, but it's because of Butch. And I have never, ever let him forget that. And my husband has never let him forget that. So what do you do now?
What do I do now?
What don't you do now?
Well, being a child actor in the 60s and 70s was a wonderful childhood. I met a lot of great people. Mickey sitting right next to me, being one of them. But what I was always a gearhead. I was always enjoyed cars. Being around George Barris and back in the 70s, the drag racing funny cars. I was friends with Jack Christman, who invented that. So I always wanted to be a race car driver. That really didn't work out, but I always enjoyed cars. So I have a Munster coach and a Dragula, and I've figured a good way to see the country and meet people is by taking my cars, and I do a lot of automotive events. The cars out there are, I'm a member of Dead Man's Curve Car Club, and John, whose cars are out there, hey John, when I'm on the East Coast, we use his cars, and then my cars are in the Midwest. And so I go around and do a lot of conventions, meet and greet a lot of people, but mostly car-related events are my specialty.
I gotta ask you a question. So does everybody realize that the Munsters, the reboot, is it a reboot? No, it's a,
Rob Zombie is a huge Munsters fan, and he, for 20 years, he's been trying to get Universal to allow him to do a Munsters remake, a reboot remake, and day after tomorrow it premieres. I've seen some clips. I have a voiceover part in it. I'm the Tin Can Man, and he's got a very strategic few scenes in the movie that are very, very cool. I'm very happy with it. But the bottom line is Rob's done a wonderful job. I think it's going to be a huge hit. A lot of people are very opinionated because you're either a Rob Zombie horror fan.
Wait a minute, people are opinionated.
Yeah.
Wait, are they on social media? You mean they say different things?
Right. They're like, the Munsters, it can't be redone. It's going to be horrible. Rob, he should stick to music and horror movies. And anyway, the bottom line is, I think if people actually just view it on its own merits without any preconceived judgmental issues and just want to see it, I think they're going to be very, very happy, and I think they're going to enjoy it if they're willing to just leave the baggage at the door, so to speak. So I'm really looking forward to it. When I first saw the footage that I was doing back in December when I went in to do my voiceover work, it reminded me, the texture and the look reminded me a lot of a Tim Burton movie, who I very much enjoy Tim Burton movies. So the fact that Tim Burton is now doing Wednesday, which is the remake of The Addams Family for Netflix, and Rob is doing The Munsters, it's kind of an interesting recreation of the mid-'60s black and white versions on television. And I'm very excited about how it's going to be received. Right now, there are some people that have received theirs already in the mail, their movies, and everybody has been, I think the ratio of positive to negative is like 90% positive, which is pretty good.
And it's going to be on Netflix, so you're going to hear a lot about it. You know who I was really surprised is a huge Munsters fan is Howard Stern.
Yeah.
I just heard an old interview recently, but that's one of his favorite shows.
Right. I did Howard Stern several times with Al Lewis when Al was alive. We came into New York to do the grand opening of his restaurant, and I was a little concerned going on Howard Stern because being on the West Coast before Sirius Radio, I didn't know who he was other than the term shock jock. But it was all an act. When the microphone was off, he was a really humble, very sweet guy. When it was on, he was, shocking people into listening to him. But he is a huge Munsters fan, and him and Rob Zombie used to get into Munster debates and who knew the most about it. So, but a lot of famous people are Munster fans. Paul McCartney is the big Munsters fan. I know that for a fact.
Tell them the story about the Beatles.
The Beatles came to Hollywood to do the Hollywood Bowl concert. They came out to the Universal Studios. I wasn't working that day, and they came on the set, and obviously nobody bothered to get me an autograph, which I was very, very kind of bummed out about it. But about 2 years later, I wound up doing I went up for an interview for the Monkees, and at that time, the Monkees were as big, if not bigger, in America than the Beatles because they had a TV show. Their I mean, the hits that they put out, I think they actually put out more hits at that particular time than the Beatles were doing. So for me to spend a whole week working with the boys alongside my idols at the time, I was like a very happy 8th grade kid. It was a week, probably the best week of my life at that time, yeah.
How crazy is that? Do you have any questions that you would love to ask? Right here.
And I'm a little hard of hearing, so speak up.
What?
I just have one question for you.
Yeah.
Did you get to keep Wolfie?
Yes and no, and I'll tell you how that answers. I was out doing an Ironside at Universal Studios when I was about 19 years old, so that would be 7 years after the show was over. Eddie Keyes, the prop man who was on the Munsters when he was 85 years old, was still alive. I had no idea. I went out, and here comes Eddie Keyes. He's 92 years old now, still working. And he goes, I got something you need to have. And I go, what is that? He goes, stay put. And he comes back with Woof Woof. And he says, here, put this in the trunk of your car and don't tell anybody where you got it. And he had been carrying that damn doll around for 7 years waiting for me to show up. And so, yes, I have a Woof Woof, although I let him fall apart, and he deteriorated, unfortunately, because I put him in the bay window of a house at the beach and on a noose, and he was hanging there, and the sun got to him, and we had to recreate him, and I have 3 versions of him right now, but the original, unfortunately, never made it from Hermosa Beach, and the one I have now is the son of Woof Woof.
The son of Woof Woof.
Yeah.
Woof Woof Jr. You have any other questions for Butch? I see a hand back there. I see 2 hands back there. It'd be like doing those
start over
bidding
here.
things.
Yeah.
Thanks. Hi, Butch.
Yes.
Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Hi, I wanted to ask you a question about what was it like working on the movie The Phantom Tollbooth, and did you actually get to meet the other voice actors on there, like Mel Blanc and June Foray and Dawes Butler?
Yep.
Did you record your parts separately? And did you at least get to meet Chuck Jones?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, ready? Here's the answer.
All right, go ahead.
I was really lucky because aside from doing the Munsters and Lidsville and in the middle of the Monkees, Chuck Jones had one feature film in his entire career, and it was called The Phantom Tollbooth. He hired me, and it took a couple years to complete this animated movie because they would do it in short doses. They would animate a little bit, then they would do voiceover work, then they'd animate a little bit more. But for me, from the time I was like 13 to 14, I got to go into the sound booth with the likes of Mel Blanc, Dawes Butler, June Foray, Hans Conried, all the A-listers in Hollywood that Chuck recruited to be in this movie because, Chuck's one of the gold standard of animators in the world. So for me to be able to work hand in hand with Chuck, and he actually directed the live versions up in Frisco with the opening and the closing of the movie. I'm an actual kid in real time, and then I turn into an animated character in the middle. Chuck, the unfortunate thing about that movie was MGM produced it, and Chuck's vision was to have it on a national television show, a movie every year like The Wizard of Oz. That's what he was hoping for. MGM, right when the movie completed, got out of the movie business, and they sold off the entire MGM studio to open up the MGM Grand Hotel in Las Vegas. So the show never got its proper release. And to this day, it's always been well received and everybody loves it, but it never became the big annual event that Chuck was hoping for. But if you get a chance to see it, if you haven't, it's a great movie, it's a great book, and it's one of the highlights of my career of working the Phantom Tollbooth. And thank you for noticing and appreciating it as much as I do.
There was another, you got that, okay.
Hi, Butch. I have a question. I was wondering if you had a favorite memory on the set of The Munsters.
Of The Munsters? Yeah, actually, it's interesting you mentioned that because when I completed my book called Munster Memories, the editor said, okay, we've got everybody's memories of the show. What's your favorite memory? And I said, The Munsters was my job, going to Universal every day, and it was a great job, and I enjoyed it, but my favorite memory of that 2-year window wasn't really the Munster set. It was when I had free time, and you're a 12-year-old kid. What do little 12-year-old boys like to do? They like to explore. So here I am at the greatest studio in the world with the biggest back lot, and I had some free time. My favorite memory was going to visit everybody else around the studio and see what they were up to. Whether it was Mike Westmore in the lab making, stuff for sci-fi movies, or Alfred Hitchcock, making scary movies. But probably my favorite destination was the McHale's Navy Lagoon with Ernie Borgnine and Tim Conway, because it was outdoors. And then my uncle used to supply horses to the studios, and I would go visit him at the Wagon Train set or the Virginian set or Laramie. So my favorite thing to do was roam around the studio and explore. But if I had to pick something on the Munsters, it was whenever the Munster coach was around and I got a chance to ride around in the car. That would be my favorite thing to do.
Hey, so
Too close. Just shout.
So I'm a biology teacher, and I had a genetics question. Herman Munster, your TV dad, was a Frankenstein monster. Lily Munster, your TV mom, was a vampire. You were a werewolf. Do you think Lily Munster was unfaithful? Or do you think that the werewolf gene skipped a generation genetically?
You've been waiting to ask that question all your life, haven't you?
I have, indeed.
Well,
The mailman was Dracula.
Here's how that works out. Number one, Lily was faithful, always. They were like, in fact, the new movie is the greatest love affair ever told, Herman and Lily meeting, number one. Number two, in Hollywood, there's a thing called creative license. That they actually, these TV shows you watch, they're not real. They make stuff up. And Eddie was a more unique, fun-loving little character as a werewolf than he would have been as the third vampire in the house. Thank you.
I'll tell you something. One of the opportunities that I always have is I never ask about the television shows, but I've got to let Butch tell you a story that absolutely blew my mind. Tell them about your dad, the baseball player.
Oh. Well,
this is nuts.
As if being, on the Munsters and having a great time doing studio work wasn't enough, my mom fell in love with a very handsome young man who happened to be playing for back then, they were called the Los Angeles Angels, which they're currently called, but before they became the California Angels. Anyway, his name was Ken Hunt. Very handsome ball player, athletic kind of guy. And so what happened was, when the off season, Kenny used to take me to work at the studios, and he actually wound up playing the catcher in the Herman the Rookie episode with Leo DeRocher. But when the season was happening, baseball season, and he was around, I got a chance to go to the ballpark early, shag flies, go into the stands, go into the clubhouses, meet all the players. They were nothing but big kids themselves, baseball players, and they all love the Munsters. So here I am at the studio, or I'm at the ballpark. But either way it's going, I had a wonderful childhood because I got to know all the Major League ball players. And my stepdad was actually Mickey Mantle's roommate with the Yankees before he came to the Angels. And he's buried in Fargo, North Dakota, next to Roger Maris, because they both grew up together in North Dakota, and they both wound up in Yankee Stadium at the same time. I mean, and he was a great guy, and I had a wonderful time, and he had a 5-year career. Unfortunately, he injured his shoulder, and he never really regained he had a rookie year of 24 homers and 84 RBIs, and he was the best center fielder defensively in the league, and he had a great career ahead of him had he not gotten injured. But I had a very good time, and I was really glad for the experience of being able to do the father and son games and meet all the ball players and this and that. So I was doubly lucky.
But now, who took you to your first game?
The baseball game?
Yeah.
My first baseball, you mean hockey game?
Hockey game.
Fred and Al.
Hockey game,
yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, Fred and Al, being in California, they were big hockey fans, the New Yorkers out there. And we didn't have a professional, the Kings didn't exist. So we had a minor league team called the LA Blades. And I remember that Fred and Al invited me to a hockey game. My mom dropped me off at the sports arena, and I went in with them. And after the second period, I get up and I walk out, and I'm getting ready to go, and they go, no, it's not over. I go, what do you mean it's the second half? It's over. He goes, no, there's 3 periods. It's thirds. I go, who the heck designed this game? So that was my introduction to hockey, was leaving after the second period until they drug me back in, and then we went in to meet all the players who none of them had teeth. Imagine that. No hockey player, and no good hockey player has any teeth.
That's really no. I have a question for you though. If you could have played any part in any television show, that your dream part, what would that have been?
Well, my favorite episode, my favorite series was always The Twilight Zone, and I was always very jealous of Bill and Mooney because they did 3 of them, and I didn't get even to do one. And I also like Star Trek a lot, the original Star Trek.
Mickey literally just said those 2 shows.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. When I went on an interview for Star Trek, and it was an episode where there was a whole planet of kids, and they had like 20 kids. I didn't get a part. I go, what the heck? I went on the Cowboys, and I could ride a horse, and I didn't get hired. They told me I was not rugged looking enough for the Cowboys. The Star Trek thing, I don't have an idea. Twilight Zone, I missed out on that one. But as far as the funniest story that I did have a chance to, and I turned it down, was I met an unknown director in 1970 named George Lucas, who came down to the beach to track me down while I was surfing. I had long hair, I looked like Robert Plant and Led Zeppelin. I get out of the water and he goes, hey, the first thing I'm going to do is you're going to have to cut that hair if you want to be in my movie. And I go, thanks, but no thanks. And he goes, but it's a little movie about this cars in 1962 up in Modesto, and I want you to be the lead. And I said, no, thank you. And it turned out I turned down Richard Dreyfuss's part in American Graffiti without even reading the script. And then when I saw the movie, I went, oh my God. Oh my God, what have I done? If my career wasn't on the rocks then, it certainly was. It was done. But every actor in Hollywood has one of those, I should have done that situations. But mine was telling an unknown George Lucas, thanks, but no thanks.
Yeah, how about that one? Do you have any other questions that you would like to ask? Oh, Joe over here.
Oh, geez, it's Joe.
Hi. Here's my question. What's your opinion of the Munsters in color? Because the TV show, you did the movie, you did Munster Go Home. Personally, I like the movie. I own it on Blu-ray. Great movie. But I don't feel they work in color. I think it's better in black and white because the old movies were in black and white. I'm wondering what your opinion is on that.
Yes, it is. It is better in black and white at the time, and here's why. It was the Munsters is a one-of-a-kind, one-off show, no doubt about it, and it's interesting why the success has been so solid and enduring for so long. And I'll tell you, in my opinion, which leads up to your question, is Universal was the monster studio in the 40s, late 30s, 40s, and 50s. They made all the Frankenstein, Dracula, Wolfman, Mummy, Phantom of the Opera, you name it, they made them. Creature, Black Lagoon. So when Leave It to Beaver went off the air, and the producers, who at that time, they were also doing a very unique spin on a series sitcom from a kid's point of view. Leave It to Beaver was all pretty much done from Wally and Beaver's point of view of life, and the parents were secondary characters. So they took that idea and they took the Universal Studio technique of making film noir, whatever you want to call it, and they took the monster genre and applied it to a script from Leave It to Beaver scripts, and they mushed them together, and then they brought in Fred and Al from Car 54, and they made this family unit that was believable but still monster-like, but you never thought of them as monsters. It was a very abstract concept, but the view and the visuals of it were very Universal Monsters 1940, shot on film, the lighting, that's the set designs, the cobwebs, the special effects. Grandpa's laboratory was actually from the original Frankenstein laboratory. So you had this really, really good look and feel that they were good at, and then they applied it with Leave It to Beaver writing and scripts and comedy and Fred and Al's techniques, and you had this perfect storm that just created for a couple of years. The television didn't have color at that time anyway, so it had to be in black and white. But I think it would have been a better fit in black and white anyway. So we just got lucky.
Now here's a bit of trivia that you may not realize. The Munster house was actually used in what other show?
Oh, Desperate Housewives?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was painted up very nice, and they made it look like, I don't know who lived in it, but I think it might have been, what's her name? Which one of the housewives? Terry
Hatcher.
Hatcher, that's the one. I believe it was her house, but I'm not sure. And
See,
then
we're not Desperate Housewives, so we're not very familiar with
Terry
that.
Hatcher, yes.
So listen, what we're going to do is because obviously the Comic-Con is wrapping up,
Yep.
and everybody has to go back to their homes. We have another opportunity right now for you to do the Christmas photo with Butch and with Mickey, and then you have the Dragula that's out there, which is the original Dragula, correct?
Yes, it is.
The original one. And I have to tell you something. First of all, I know Butch for a long time, and I learned through all of this experience that when you have the opportunity to meet these legends, you never want to live in regret. and while you have the opportunity, come over and tell them how much you love them, because it means a lot to these guys as much as it means to you guys that are watching it.
Yeah, people ask me, do you enjoy doing these things? I go, well, how can you not enjoy being around positive vibes, positive energy, people telling you how much they enjoyed the show with their family, loved ones that have passed on? It's really enjoyable. We get as much out of it as you guys do. It's really, really good to be here, and I think Mickey would concur with that. Is we're very, very blessed to have a fan base as loyal and as wonderful as you guys, and we have an extended family. I mean, we're very, very blessed. We have millions and millions of people that we consider to be family. Thank you.
Thank you. Big round of applause. Butch Patrick, everyone.
He's amazing.
Hi, this is Gary Chalk, Optimus Prime. Please stay tuned to Fandom Spotlight. You can watch it online at any time.